people good or evil by nature. Human morals are shaped by the family and the society they are brought up in. An ongoing popular example is equality and feminism. Our morals help us decide what is good or bad, and that varies from person to person. That being said, most humans have a general margin of good and bad things that are blatantly distinguishable. We simply judge them based on how drastic or minute they be. For example, thief versus murderer. Someone poor will think thief from the rich is justified, but some will say thief is thief and it's wrong regardlessly. Here we demonstrate how every other person has different perception of wrong and right. Therefore, it cannot be undoubtedly said what is wrong or right without complications. That's on human nature in general. If we talk about an individual, every human primal instinct is their own survival. Some have strong selfless values and put someone else before them, and some put themselves before all others. A man can save either his wife or his child. He can have another child, but his wife wouldn't come back. Everyone will judge his decision differently. If he picks his wife, some will call him selfish and some will call him practical. If he picks his child, some will call him an amazing father and some will call him stupid. This clearly demonstrates the difference in perception in every individual.
Theft. The crimes of robbery and theft are easily being confused because both involves taking someone else's money or property, but offenses are quite different. Primarily, robbery differs from theft as it involves force to take someone else's property. Mostly, the use of force makes serious crime in most cases. Theft is also called as larceny, and it covers a wide variety of criminal offenses. For example, shoplifting and stealing a motorcycle are both forms of theft. Let's go more into detail with larceny. Larceny, also known as simple theft, a type of crime that involves unlawfully taking or using someone else's property. Basically, they all have the same elements, taking property belonging to another person, but have a subtle variation, such as whether it was taken from a retail store or the type of property stolen, etc. Now, identity theft. This crime is particularly damaging in some cases. Purchases made through this theft, which is identity theft, can destroy victims' credit scores and financial resources, and when this theft is identified, it is very late to take actions against such cases. It is considered a federal crime in some instances and punishable by a lengthy jail sentence. Some states also have identity theft laws. Moving on to robbery. Robbery is a theft with added elements of violence, often referred to as armed robbery or mugging. Due to the use of threat of violence, this type of charges carry much heavier penalty. Decision making process, how actually theft occurs for a good purpose. For example, Robin Hood complex as his motivation. In my surroundings, I believe corporations are evil and I have to do something about it to stop the injustice. I believe shoplifting is the best way, and to carry this out, I might take products which are needed. In this way, theft occurs, but this process specifies a desire to act on a moral principle as the motivation for theft. Now we will talk about Robin Hood complex, how it can be used as an excuse. For example, I need a particular thing, but I'm unwilling or unable to pay for it. So I just enjoy the thrill of stealing, and then theft occurs. Then the guilt and cognitive dissonance set in, and I may feel bad about it, and I just want that feeling to go away. And I choose defense mechanism or actions for my guilt to go away. All of us use defense mechanism to elevate negative feelings in order to avoid guilt and resolve cognitive dissonance. If we meet a person with offender's mindset, we should understand him or her rather than being frustrated on them. We can harness that knowledge and turn tables on them.
Euthanasia, a case related to this topic. Steve Crossley is a 65-year-old engineer living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. After a vigorous professional life, he has been looking forward for retirement. Just 6 weeks ago, he began to notice that his clothes were fitting more loosely than normal and that he is losing weight. His appetite was decreased and he now has growing pain in his lower back. After 2.5 weeks of testing, an abnormal CT scan revealed a mass in his pancreas. Steve was diagnosed with an incurable cancer of the pancreas. The prospect of chemotherapy with all of its complications and side effects does not appeal to him. Despite this, he followed through with chemotherapy. It is now 4 months later. It is clear that he was losing the battle. He has lost all of his hair and has constant nausea from the chemo. The cancer has invaded Steve's spinal column and he is struggling to walk. Digging deeper in the case, Steve's family doctor is afraid to give him more pain medication, fearing that he will become an addict. The principle of double effect is an ethical formula that is the basic idea. If a treatment has two effects, one good and one bad, it may be ethical to use the treatment. In this case, it could be morphine, that is narcotic used to treat pain, but may suppress respiration if given into high dose. The principle of double effect would justify using a high enough dose of morphine to treat Steve's pain. In other words, his earlier death may be an unintended consequence of the appropriate intent to relieve his suffering. Euthanasia can therefore be seen in two different lights and is debated to be made legal to this day. However, to decide if it is a morally sound thing to do or not, it is not definitive, because euthanasia helps end the pointless suffering of the people and there is no hope of recovery. Some argue that life should be given another chance, while others may say that the pain should be ended.
Murder. Murdering can be sanctioned by the state or by a group with particular interest of using murder as a tactic to achieve what was considered laudable aims not only by themselves but by other groups or states. Murder is committed as a result of many motives, some of which are loathing, lethal hate directed towards one person, for example, an abusive parent, or a group such as homosexuals or prostitutes, culture or nation, for example, Palestinians towards Israelis, and vice versa. Loot, killing for financial gain through inheritance or insurance payouts, a murder occurring during a robbery, or a gang war over the control of drug markets. Employment as a contract killer or mercenary. But findings of motives for murder does not go far enough to explain murder. The most evil individuals in history, like Hitler, Pol Pot, Stalin, and Mao, are viewed as heroes by some inhabitants of very countries whose population they ruled with such terrible cruelty. Modern military and political leaders, whilst executing warfare, construe the deaths of innocent civilians not as murders but as collateral damage. A few examples of murder cases would be Jessica Lal murder case. On April 29, 1999, Manu Sharma, the son of former Union Minister Vinod Sharma, shot Jessica Lal after the lady refused to serve him liquor at a Tamarind Court restaurant in South Delhi. The case dominated headlines when Sharma was acquitted by a trial court in 2006. Followed a nationwide protest, and the case was taken up by the High Court of Delhi, which led to his imprisonment. In 2011, a film, No One Killed Jessica, was helmed around this murder case, which starred Vidya Balan and Rani Mukherjee. This case is a classic example of murder out of rage and irrationality. People argue saying that criminals must not be forgiven for their actions as it was completely voluntary, but others argue saying that he wasn't in his senses and should be given another chance. Another famous case would be the encounter of Manya Surv. Manya Surv was a well-known underworld gangster who dealt with drugs, murder, extortion, etc. Surv was killed in 1982 by the Maharashtra police, which is regarded as Mumbai's first encounter killing. In this case, it can be said that murder was justified because Manya Surv took countless lives, looted, and committed many more crimes. It can be said that this encounter was good riddance. But if his story is considered, we can see that his entire life was shaped because of one false arrest. While he was set on a path for a better life, we can say that he was a good man, but external elements pushed him to become what he did.
Laws against criminal acts and punishment. In many states, theft can be either a felony or a misdemeanor depending on the value of the stolen property. For example, in Nevada, theft is a misdemeanor if the property is valued at less than £650 and a felony if the value is £650 or more. Theft convictions carry a range of potential punishments, and the range varies depending on the state. For instance, in Nevada, a felony theft conviction can result in up to 10 years in prison and a fine of as much as £10,000. A misdemeanor conviction in the state carries the possibility of 6 months jail time and a fine of up to £1,000. Penalties for robbery. Because robbery involves force, it is often considered a more serious crime than theft. In most cases, robbery is a felony and a conviction can result in significant prison time, especially if a weapon was involved. For example, Georgia's robbery statute provides that the crime is punishable up to 20 years in prison. However, an armed robbery conviction in that state can lead to a sentence of up to 20 years in prison, life imprisonment, or even capital punishment. IPC Section 300. Murder is defined in Section 300 where culpable homicide amounts to murder. Culpable homicide Section 299 is a genus and murder is its species. It is necessary that all murder is a culpable homicide, but not necessary that all culpable homicide is a murder. The punishment for the murder is defined in Section 302. There are certain expectations provided in Section 300 which state the case of culpable homicides which does not amount to murder, which is punishable under Section 304 of Indian Penal Code. IPC Section 302. Punishment for murder. Whoever commits murder shall be punished with death or imprisonment for life and shall also be liable to fine. IPC Section 378. According to Section 378 of Indian Penal Code, whoever intending to take dishonesty and movable property out of the possession of any person without that person's consent moves that property in order to such taking is said to commit theft. IPC Section 379. Whoever commits theft shall be punished with imprisonment or either description for a term which may extend to 3 years or with fine or with both.